Welcome to CINEPRO, where we bring your favorite movies back to life with quick recaps, hidden details, and everything you missed. The story of Wayward Pines takes place in a small town in Idaho, USA, where a man slowly opens his eyes, finding himself lying in a forest, all his belongings and wallet gone. Ethan, the male lead, is an FBI agent. On this day, he receives orders from his superiors to investigate the disappearance of two agents in a small town. Just as he and his partner Stallings are chatting happily in their car, he wakes up again and finds himself in a forest with no sign of Stallings nearby. Ethan staggers into a small town seeking help, but strangely, every resident looks at him with an extremely eerie gaze. He hurries into a restaurant, asking the waitress where this is. The woman replies, "This place is called Wayward Pines." And just as she finishes speaking, Ethan passes out, overcome by exhaustion. Meanwhile, the CIA receives news of Ethan's car accident. But according to their intel, the crash caused a massive fire, and both Ethan and Stallings were burned to ashes. The scene shifts back to Ethan, who has been taken to the hospital by the townsfolk. Strangely, he is the only patient in this hospital. He urgently asks the nurse where his partner from the crash is, but Nurse Pam insists he was the only one from the start. There was no partner. Ethan finds this very strange. He asks to make a phone call home to let them know he's safe, but Nurse Pam makes excuses, saying there are no phones in the hospital. Feeling something is wrong, Ethan decides to leave. He gets dressed and walks into the hallway, which is eerily quiet. Just as he presses the elevator button to leave, Nurse Pam grabs him from behind, warning him not to leave or he will regret it. An angry Ethan tells her to mind her own business. Nurse Pam reluctantly moves her foot, blocking the elevator, letting him go. Everything about this town feels deeply unsettling to him. Later, Ethan enters a bar. He asks the bartender, Beverly, to use the phone, desperate to call his family, but the line just keeps ringing unanswered. The kind Beverly senses this man must be in trouble. She quickly brings Ethan some food. During their conversation, Beverly learns Ethan is a Secret Service agent investigating the disappearance of two agents. The good-hearted Beverly, seeing he's injured and has no money or ID, hands Ethan a slip of paper with her address on it, telling him he can come to her any time if he needs help. But after Beverly leaves, Ethan notices strange words written on the back of the note. No crickets and Wayward Pines. This puzzles Ethan deeply. When he leaves the bar, it's already dark. Walking down the road, he suddenly hears the sound of crickets from the grass. He remembers Beverly's words, bends down to look, and discovers the supposed cricket sound is actually coming from a hidden player. This deepens his suspicions about the town. The next day, loud knocking wakes Ethan. It's the hotel staff evicting him because he can't pay the bill. With nowhere else to go, he heads to the address Beverly left. Arriving there, he finds a dilapidated house. Double-checking the address is correct, he walks inside. Slowly pushing open the bedroom door, he finds a highly decomposed corpse tied tightly to the bed. It is Agent Evans, the missing agent Ethan has been searching for. Ethan rushes to the town police station to report this. But Sheriff Pope's attitude is bizarre. He seems to already know about the body, but is completely indifferent. Even though Ethan tells him about his bizarre experiences, Sheriff Pope just keeps eating his ice cream, ignoring him. Left with no choice, Ethan tries to call the Secret Service himself, but the operator says there's no such person there, and the operator's cold attitude makes Ethan furious. But what comes next is even worse. He goes back to the bar to find Beverly, who helped him yesterday, but the man working there says there is no Beverly. Ethan insists he couldn't be mistaken. The man suggests he must have been drunk last night. The sheer strangeness of everything pushes Ethan to the breaking point. During their argument, the man takes Ethan by surprise, striking him hard from behind. Ethan passes out. The man takes out a walkie-talkie, seemingly reporting to someone. When he wakes up, he's strapped tightly to a hospital bed. A man who introduces himself as Dr. Jenkins, a psychiatrist, approaches him. He tells Ethan that tests show a blood clot in his brain, and everything he saw in the town was a hallucination. He then prepares to perform brain surgery on Ethan. Ethan struggles desperately, but a nurse forcefully injects him with anesthesia. He's wheeled into the operating room. Just when all hope seems lost, Beverly arrives and rescues him. After a tense battle of wits with Nurse Pam, they finally escape the hospital. Inside an abandoned house, Beverly reveals the truth to Ethan. His partner, Agent Evans, was also killed by Sheriff Pope. She herself was a traveling salesperson who arrived after a bizarre car crash in 1999. She has been stuck in this town for a year. Hearing this, Ethan is stunned. He tells Beverly it is now 2014, then passes out again. Meanwhile, at the Secret Service, the police launch an investigation. Strangely, no trace of Ethan is found in the crashed car, as if he vanished into thin air. The Secret Service urgently contacts his family. Ethan's wife, Teresa, immediately tries calling him, but also gets no answer. Elsewhere, the Secret Service investigator Adam is waiting for someone, and that person turns out to be Dr. Jenkins. Adam expresses a desire to cancel the plan, but Jenkins says it's already far too late. The two seem to share some dark secret. The scene shifts back to Ethan. When he wakes up, Beverly has vanished. He dresses and wanders the town. He notices a family hosting an outdoor party and spots a strangely familiar woman in the crowd. She is Kate, the missing FBI agent he was sent to find. They used to be partners and even had a special relationship. But strangely, though they were together just over a month ago, Kate now looks over a decade older. Seeing Ethan suddenly appear, Kate's face freezes. She quickly makes an excuse to leave. Exercising caution, Ethan doesn't approach her, but secretly follows Kate home. Finally, he can't resist knocking on Kate's door. Kate tells Ethan she isn't who he's looking for, but Ethan insists he isn't mistaken. Kate finds an excuse to send her husband away, then says something cryptic. "They're watching us." Ethan demands to know what's going on. Kate only says she has lived in the town for 12 years. She can't give him the answers he wants and tells him to leave immediately because his actions have put her and her husband in danger. She then retreats inside. The sheer strangeness of it all infuriates Ethan. He decides to leave this inexplicable town immediately. Ethan then picks up a stone from the roadside, smashes a car window, gets in, and floors the accelerator, speeding away. He planned to leave along a straight route, but soon bizarre events unfolded, and after driving in circles, he found himself back in Wayward Pines. No matter how he drove, he kept seeing the "Welcome Back to Wayward Pines" sign. Panicked, he quickly abandoned his car and fled into the forest. When he climbed over a mountain, he saw an utterly shocking sight. Towering before him were electric fences dozens of meters high. A sign below read, "Return to Wayward Pines immediately. Attempting to cross will be met with lethal consequences." But even more bizarrely, the fences stretched for hundreds of kilometers. The entire Wayward Pines was completely enclosed by these fences. Terrified, Ethan wanted to drive away, but just then, the town's Sheriff Pope caught up with him. Sheriff Pope finally arrested Ethan and warned him that no one should even think of escaping this place. The next day, Ethan was confined to a motel. Refusing to give up, he went to investigate the dilapidated house on the outskirts of town, believing his fellow federal agent must have left clues. Sure enough, he found a notebook on the corpse. But just then, Sheriff Pope walked in, gun in hand. Sheriff Pope seemed to despise Ethan, telling him to get out immediately. Unwilling to accept this, Ethan went to the previous bar and found Beverly, who had saved him days earlier. They started chatting, but when Ethan asked about the body in the house, Beverly instantly grew nervous. She quickly turned the music volume to maximum, then pulled Ethan up to dance. When they were close enough, Beverly whispered to him that there was a listening device under the table. Ethan told her his escape plan, hoping Beverly would flee with him, but cameras were everywhere. Seeing someone enter, Beverly quickly stuffed a banknote into his hand. Ethan then went to a cafe in town, continuing to call the Secret Service. After some probing, he realized the person on the line was fake, and the entire conversation was being monitored by some mysterious organization. Ethan pulled out money to buy coffee. Then he noticed something odd about the banknote. He found Kate again, asking how his partner Evans died in the abandoned house. But Kate seemed to have something unspeakable, even if she knew she couldn't tell him. Using the banknote, Ethan discovered that every piece of currency circulating in this town was counterfeit, issued before 1988. Yet Kate seemed completely indifferent to this fact. Just as Ethan prepared to leave, he noticed a sign on the door that read, "Do not discuss your life before." All of this confused Ethan greatly. From Sheriff Pope, Ethan learned that Evan's body was being transported to the morgue, awaiting cremation. He quickly retrieved the notebook he'd found earlier from the rotting, foul-smelling clothes. Just then, Nurse Pam suddenly appeared, and Ethan quickly made an excuse to leave. But Nurse Pam said something strange. She told Ethan he would soon be reunited with his wife and child in Wayward Pines. Ethan simply found it baffling and walked out. But in the hallway, Ethan suddenly saw his wife and son lying on a stretcher across the way. Yet when he ran over to check, there was nothing there. But Jenkins said it was all just a hallucination caused by the hemorrhage in his brain. At this point, Ethan began to doubt himself. That very night, Ethan met Beverly in a small wooded area. It turned out that notebook was a map of the town, providing crucial help for their escape plan. But before that, they had to remove the microchips implanted in them. It turned out the mysterious organization had implanted GPS tracking devices in everyone's legs for real-time location monitoring to prevent escape. Meanwhile, Ethan's wife Teresa and son Ben also set out to find him. Using Ethan's gas station transaction records, they traced him to Wayward Pines. At the same time, the Secret Service learned Teresa was investigating. Teresa then drove towards Wayward Pines. Just as the mother and son neared the edge of Wayward Pines, a police car chased them down. The person who stopped them was none other than Sheriff Pope. He claimed their car had an oil leak and offered to help. But while Teresa and her son were distracted, he severed the car's fuel line. Meanwhile, Ethan and Beverly were planning their escape from the town. They encountered Kate and her husband on the street, who warmly invited them to their home the next day. Realizing this was a perfect escape opportunity, they gladly agreed. The next day, after meticulous planning, they arrived on time for dinner. Ethan secretly stuck the tracking chip under the table, then excused himself to use the restroom. After confirming there were no listening devices in the restroom, he returned to the table reassured. But then Kate started talking to Beverly about her daughter, making Beverly extremely nervous. Because in Wayward Pines, no one is allowed to mention their past. Beverly seized the chance to say she also needed the restroom. After a long wait with Beverly not returning, Ethan pretended to go check on her and bid farewell to Kate and her husband. But after he left, Kate and her husband exchanged strange looks. They hadn't run far when the town alarm blared. Clearly, Kate and her husband had reported them. Every resident grabbed weapons and began hunting Ethan and Beverly. Seeing pursuers multiplying, Ethan told Beverly to hide while he drew them away. Unfortunately, Beverly was ultimately caught. She was dragged onto an execution platform. This place was specifically for those who attempted to escape. Sheriff Pope publicly praised Kate and her husband for reporting them, then denounced Beverly's various crimes before. The crowd cheered and applauded. They could not tolerate rule breakers, and Sheriff Pope continued to stir their emotions. Meanwhile, Ethan was still running. He sneaked into Kate's house to confront her, but Kate said it wasn't her who reported him. It was Sheriff Pope. Sheriff Pope framed them as a warning. Before he left, she gave him the tracking chip and told him to stay in Wayward Pines and stop dreaming about escape. The next day, Ethan found Beverly's body in the abandoned house. She had been hanged. Ethan then went to Beverly's original home, intending to hide there. He took a bottle of water from the fridge. Suddenly, 3 strangers walked in. Ethan quickly hid, but Peter noticed the water bottle on the table. He found an excuse to send the other 2 away, seemingly intentionally helping Ethan, telling him to leave immediately. Ethan then spotted a supply delivery truck outside. Seizing the moment when no one was looking, he sneaked inside. Soon, Ethan was transported to a mysterious place. It seemed highly unusual, full of advanced technology. As he looked around, Ethan shockingly discovered his wife's car covered in dust and heavily damaged. Not only that, Ethan also found some personal belongings of his wife and son inside the car. Suddenly, the car window was smashed. Someone injected him with a sedative. He struggled desperately, demanding to know where his family was, but the sedative took effect, and Ethan passed out. When he woke up again, he was in a hospital. A mysterious phone call rang, the voice on the other end saying his wife and son were waiting for him at home. Anxious and breathless, Ethan rushed home and indeed saw his wife and son. Teresa told Ethan they had been on their way to Wayward Pines the day before when a sheriff stopped them, claiming their car was leaking oil. Then shortly after they set off again, they were in a car crash. When they woke up, they were here. They were both in car crashes and mysteriously ended up here. Just then, Peter walked in and told Ethan that this house, which once belonged to Beverly, now belonged to them. He subtly warned Ethan that the room was under heavy surveillance. The next day, Ethan went to the sheriff's office and questioned Sheriff Pope about why he brought Ethan's family into this. But Sheriff Pope claimed he was helping him. He warned Ethan either live peacefully in Wayward Pines with his family, or if he continued investigating, he would kill him personally. That night, Kate arranged to meet Ethan in a small wooded area. There were no cameras or other people here, and Kate finally revealed the truth. It turned out 12 years ago. Kate also arrived in this town after a car crash. She had tried every possible way to escape this place, but nothing worked. Ethan found this utterly impossible because they had been together just 5 weeks ago. However, they didn't know that someone was following them in the darkness at this very moment. But when Ethan returned home, his wife was nowhere to be seen, only her wedding ring on the table. He seemed to guess what had happened. Meanwhile, Teresa was trying to leave the town with her son. Unexpectedly, Sheriff Pope chased them down in his car, herding them toward the small wooded area. Teresa and her son fled all the way to the electric fence. Sheriff Pope caught up and knocked them down. He had completely lost patience with Ethan's family, demanding why they had caused themselves so much trouble. As he closed in on Teresa to finish her, Ethan and Sheriff Pope wrestled. Finally, Sheriff Pope got his gun back, and just as he was about to deliver the killing blow, Ethan quickly picked up the gun, but the severely wounded Sheriff Pope on the ground was still uttering strange words. Ethan showed no mercy, shot him, then retrieved the fence key from Sheriff Pope's body, successfully opening the gate. But at that moment, in terror, Ethan's family quickly closed the gate and fled in the police car. After returning to town, Ethan told his wife about all the bizarre things he had experienced in the town over the past few days. Cameras and listening devices were everywhere. It was as if a mysterious organization was watching them. Teresa asked who was behind it, but Ethan said he hadn't figured it out yet. However, to escape, they had to pretend to fit in and keep playing along. Just then, Teresa noticed their son was missing. After getting out of the car, they saw a mailman deliver a package. The letter instructed Ben to report to the town school tomorrow. Ethan sensed something wrong. The next day, he secretly infiltrated the police station to get some weapons for protection. But just then, the station clerk walked in, carrying a cake. The mayor and reporters congratulated him on becoming Wayward Pines' second sheriff. Ethan was dumbfounded. He had just killed the town's Sheriff Pope the night before, and now he was appointed the new sheriff. However, Mayor Brad refused to reveal anything, saying he only followed orders from above. With no better option, Ethan pretended to blend into the town, hoping his new position might help him investigate more effectively. Meanwhile, Ben arrived at school as scheduled. Strangely, the students all looked at him with eerie eyes, and Principal Megan hurried out to greet him. But after Teresa left, Megan took Ben to her office and subjected him to a series of questions, seemingly trying to brainwash and hypnotize him. Meanwhile, over at the sheriff's office, Ethan was rummaging through everything, hoping to find something useful. Before long, he discovered a hidden compartment beneath the floor. Inside was a file that detailed information on every person in the town. It seemed that everyone had been abducted and brought here by a mysterious organization. Ethan tried asking Arlene if she remembered her past, but she was afraid to reveal anything, saying only that she loved it here and had never thought of escaping. Just then, Nurse Pam stormed in with others. They had caught a criminal spreading rebellious messages, and this person was Peter, who had helped Ethan earlier. Pam demanded his execution that night, but Ethan stated that he was now the sheriff and he called the shots. Pam, however, didn't back down, saying if Ethan didn't deal with him, she would do it herself. Pam was then thrown out by Ethan. Ethan conducted a routine interrogation of Peter, handing him a personal file and asking if he remembered his past. But Peter, with tears in his eyes, said he was kidnapped from a bar 4 years ago. He wanted to leave every moment, and his leg was broken during an escape attempt. Peter then told him about a secret route out of here. Just then, the phone rang. Pam demanded Peter's execution again at 10 p.m., but Ethan ignored her. That night, he released Peter. They went to the electric fence. Peter told him the fence carried 100,000 volts. Attempting to cross meant certain death, but to help Ethan gain the trust of the mysterious people behind it all, he was willing to sacrifice his life. Peter then ran straight into the fence. Ethan hurried back to the station to pack and prepare to escape. However, Pam walked in at that moment. She knew Peter wasn't killed by Ethan. He fooled others, but not her. Ethan didn't want to hear her nonsense and left directly. Pam then sat in Ethan's chair, slowly savoring the taste of power. It turned out she was the one who wanted to be sheriff. Soon, Ethan reached the secret spot Peter told him about. Using his agent's physical prowess, he scaled the cliff face, but he didn't know that a monster was watching him intently from the darkness. He continued moving through the forest, searching for a way out, but something seemed to be around him. He quickly fired his gun. Suddenly, a mysterious monster flashed by, scratching his arm. Terrified, Ethan kept shooting. The hit monster screamed and fled rapidly. The next day, Ethan continued his journey. Using the map, he confirmed the escape direction. Meanwhile, Ben arrived at school. Strangely, all his classmates greeted him warmly, as if it was arranged. This made Ben very uncomfortable because no one ever noticed him before. Ben quickly asked his new girlfriend, Amy, what was going on, but Amy said, "You'll understand soon." Just then, the broadcast sounded. Ben was required to attend an adaptation class immediately. He went to a bright, empty white room where only 2 other students were present. While they looked confused, Beverly walked in slowly. She introduced to the group several previous adaptation class students. They, like Ben and the others, had been invited here to learn the truth of history, and only the exceptionally gifted could attend this adaptation class. Once they passed the test, they would become the first generation of Wayward Pines. Hearing this, they were puzzled. Beverly explained that the so-called first generation were the future of Wayward Pines. Here, they would possess supreme honor and privileges. She then showed a photo taken 14 years ago. The location was the original Wayward Pines. At this moment, Ben noticed a strange creature in the photo. He asked what it was. Beverly explained it was a genetically mutated monster called Abbeys. They had continuously evolved in the harsh wilderness and were now the apex predators on Earth. Meanwhile, Ethan continued wandering through the forest, but something monstrous seemed to be chasing him. Soon, Ethan discovered a rotting elk carcass, which gave him an idea. He used the carcass as bait and quickly attracted several monsters. Ethan hid behind the trees, witnessing everything firsthand. He didn't know these were the Abbeys Beverly had spoken of. Abbeys could effortlessly devour an armed soldier alive within minutes. They possessed strong social awareness, often hunted in groups, and their razor-sharp claws could kill prey instantly with a single swipe. Shockingly, such creatures evolved from humans. Beverly then gave each of the 3 students a coin. The coin looked like a freshly unearthed artifact, seemingly ancient. The coin was engraved with the year 2049. Yet how was that possible? It was only 2014, but Beverly stated this was the truth. They had all arrived here after being rendered unconscious in car crashes. Ben and the others thought they had only been unconscious for a few hours, but the reality was, they had been in suspended animation for 2,000 years. It wasn't 2014, but 4028, and they were stunned. When Ethan emerged from the forest, he was completely bewildered. Before him lay only ruined human structures. Just days ago, this had been a bustling metropolis. Just then, a helicopter flew in from the distant sky. The helicopter then landed right in front of him, and the person stepping out was Jenkins, who had rescued him before. Ethan didn't know Jenkins was actually behind all of this. Jenkins told Ethan the world he knew was gone. Humanity had succumbed to a genetic mutation crisis, transforming entirely into monsters, and they were the only survivors. But Ethan refused to believe it, thinking this was a government secret experiment. Jenkins told him that Wayward Pines was his own creation. Like Noah's Ark, it was humanity's only salvation, so no one should ever try to escape it. But Ethan still refused to believe any of it. At that moment, the roars of monsters echoed from the distance. Jenkins urged Ethan to board the helicopter immediately. Seeing the approaching monsters, Ethan finally wavered. Soon they arrived at a cliffside, and then Jenkins opened an iron door. This was the secret base of the survivors. They had survived this long because of the ample supplies stored here. Ethan then saw the communications room. Jenkins told him these people were called volunteers dedicating their lives here. Their purpose was to prevent survivors from contacting the outside world, making them believe they were still living in their original time. Ethan felt a chill. Just then, Jenkins had to attend to something urgent, so Pam took him to treat his wounds. Ethan now fully believed that the human society he knew had long perished. But one thing still puzzled him. He had only been in a car crash. Suddenly, Ethan heard terrifying roars from the lab. As he slowly approached the glass door, a hideous monster startled him. It was the same creature Ethan had seen in the jungle. Jenkins arrived then, ordering the soldiers to stand down before subduing the monster with a tranquilizer spray. Ethan demanded to know what it was, and Jenkins stated it was a genetically mutated human called an Abbey. It turned out that 2,000 years ago, Jenkins had discovered a minute but critical mutation in the human gene. He tried to warn the world, but people dismissed it as absurd. Encouraged by his sister Pam, Jenkins implemented his plan using his life savings to found a company. The company focused on cryogenic suspension research and recruited volunteers who believed in him. The volunteers then staged accidents to kidnap useful individuals from society, finally using cryogenic suspension to freeze them, waiting to be revived when the time was right. The car crash Ethan experienced was orchestrated by Jenkins. He had only been awakened recently, naively believing it was still 2014 when in fact it was 4028. To monitor everyone in the town, Jenkins filled Wayward Pines with cameras, aiming to prevent people from discovering the truth and escaping. Seeing hundreds of frozen bodies before him, Ethan was stunned. He angrily confronted Jenkins. "You abducted people and froze them without consent. Did you even ask for their permission?" But Jenkins believed he was right. 2,000 years ago, he foresaw humanity's doom. No one believed him, so kidnapping was his only option. It was like seeing your neighbor's house on fire. Ethan then followed Jenkins to his room. It was opulently decorated, elegant, and classical, fitting for a leader. Ethan then questioned Jenkins why he didn't tell the town's residents the truth, but Jenkins claimed it was useless. He had told the truth to the first group awakened, but the resulting panic spread like cancer, slowly consuming the entire town. Some, unable to accept the truth, tried to flee and were slaughtered by the Abbeys. Others, overwhelmed by terror and despair, chose suicide. Their minds couldn't process the shock of the new world because it was too staggering. Thus, the first attempt to rebuild Wayward Pines failed. Faced with the suffering of those people, he could only choose to turn a blind eye. He sank into deep self-reproach and guilt, but also learned the survival law of the apocalypse. Strict rules were essential. Now Ethan fully understood Jenkins's reasoning. Jenkins then stated the dark era was over. The first generation of youth nurtured in Wayward Pines would sow the seeds of enlightenment, fearless and unburdened by the old world's ideas. They were humanity's last hope. Ethan suddenly realized his son Ben must also know the truth. And then Jenkins revealed why he had awakened Ethan. He had recently detected a rebellious faction operating within the town. They had removed their tracking implants and seemed to be planning an uprising. Jenkins hoped Ethan, as a Secret Service agent, could investigate and protect the town, their only home. Ethan also seemed thoroughly brainwashed by Jenkins, stating he would protect Wayward Pines at any cost. However, he didn't know that his former lover, Kate, was actually part of the rebel group, and they were currently executing a secret plan. The next day, Ethan prepared to drive his son to school. Then, he noticed something wrong with the car radio and quickly told his wife and son to get out. Sure enough, he found a pipe bomb hidden under the hood. This was clearly the rebels trying to kill him. Ethan then went to the police station to investigate. He suspected a man in town named Franklin because he had previously been a demolitions expert. He met Franklin at a cafe, subtly questioning him about the bomb, but Franklin seemed to be hiding something, quickly making an excuse and leaving. Sensing something was wrong, Ethan followed Franklin as he left the cafe. Soon, he discovered Franklin conspiring with Kate's husband, Harold. Seeing Ethan approach, they quickly dispersed. Ethan took the opportunity to talk to Harold about the car bomb, demanding to know if they did it, but Harold claimed ignorance. Ethan didn't waste words, preparing to take Harold to the station for questioning. But as soon as they left the bar, Harold pushed down a passerby and used the chance to escape. Ethan immediately chased and subdued him. Thus, Harold was arrested. Ethan urged him to tell the truth, but Harold was unusually adamant, insisting he knew nothing about the bomb. Ethan told him not to even think about escaping this place. Yet Harold found it strange. Ethan demanded Harold tell him who the other accomplices were, but Harold still refused to say anything, left with no choice. Ethan wrote a note for Harold to deliver to Kate, convinced she was the rebel leader. Sure enough, that night, Kate confronted Ethan. She said she had been trapped here for 12 whole years, thinking every day about how to escape. During this time, she met a group of residents who felt the same. They met secretly in the woods regularly to discuss escape plans. Ethan warned them to stop thinking about escape immediately, which deeply puzzled Kate. Ethan sighed, telling her the world they knew was gone. It wasn't 2014, but 4028. Hearing this, Kate was confused. She thought Ethan must have been brainwashed by whoever controlled the town. She pretended to agree with Ethan, saying she would give up the escape plan, then quickly found her accomplices, saying they were exposed and must act tonight while they still had a chance. At midnight, they gathered at the town's electric fence, ready to blow it open. But just then, Ethan appeared. He threatened them at gunpoint to get down and took Kate hostage, forcing them to disarm the bomb. Her companions, unable to bear seeing Kate die, reluctantly disarmed the bomb. They were then locked up by Ethan at the station. Ethan pleaded with them, saying the world was gone, urging them to stop trying to escape and acting so recklessly. But Kate said something strange. Realizing something was wrong, Ethan noticed Harold wasn't there. They must have had a backup plan. Meanwhile, another bomb was placed inside a supply delivery truck by one of Kate's other accomplices. It turned out Kate's group was feigning an attack on the fence to buy time for Harold. Ethan urgently pressed her to reveal Harold's location, but Kate refused to say. Left with no choice, he went to the town surveillance room. Checking the cameras, he saw Harold had handed a bag to a delivery driver earlier. The sharp Ethan was certain it contained a bomb and deduced the delivery truck would target the electric fence tonight. Understanding the plan, Ethan quickly drove off in pursuit. Meanwhile, Ethan's son Ben sneaked out of the house. He planned to meet Amy for a date that night, their destination being the woods on the outskirts. To hitch a ride, Amy slipped into the delivery truck with Ben while the driver was distracted. However, she soon found the bag inside. It contained a music box. She gently turned the key, music playing as the atmosphere turned romantic. She didn't know it was actually a time bomb. The scene shifts to Ethan, driving in pursuit. He encountered a roadblock set family. The next day, residents cleaned up the explosion site. Inside the cafe, everyone discussed the previous night's blast, an atmosphere of fear and anxiety filling the entire town. To ease the tension with Jenkins's authorization, the town held a group party. At the party, Brad explained to the residents that the explosion was just an accident caused by a gas leak, urging everyone to relax. But then Ethan charged forward. He told the people the truth, stating, "Last night wasn't a gas leak, but a rebel attack." He urged everyone to go home immediately and ensure their safety, and Ethan's words and actions thoroughly angered Jenkins. Meanwhile, Harold and two other accomplices hid in the woods. They were the three who confronted Ethan last night, but now one of them was barely clinging to life, because during last night's operation, their companion suffered internal bleeding from injuries and couldn't be saved. They could only watch him die. While Harold and Alan were desperately digging a hole to bury their companion, Alan suddenly stopped. He disagreed with burying him here. He should be buried in the land of freedom outside the fence. So before long, Ethan received a report. A man claimed his heavy-duty truck was stolen an hour ago. Ethan immediately understood it must be the work of the rebels. He guessed they wanted to crash the electric fence with the truck, so he quickly drove towards the perimeter wall. Sure enough, halfway there, Ethan spotted the rebel Harold. Harold fled desperately, forcing Ethan to fire a warning shot. He then ran up and subdued Harold directly. Meanwhile, Alan was already driving the heavy truck towards the electric fence. The next moment, Alan finally crashed through the wall, reaching the outside. He quickly dragged his companion's body out of the truck. He shouted excitedly, thrilled to have finally escaped, unaware that several Abbeys had appeared behind him. Just then, one Abbey spotted the breach. It crawled under the truck and entered the town. The Abbey quickly let out a terrifying shriek to call its companions, but the next second it was Ethan arriving. He shot the Abbey dead instantly, but the gunfire attracted two more Abbeys attempting to crawl in. Ethan fired two more shots, blowing out the truck's tires and crushing the Abbeys underneath. Back at the station, several students barged in. They were the first generation of Wayward Pines, demanding the sheriff immediately execute the rebels for violating the town's rules. If the sheriff tried to protect the terrorists, they would take matters into their own hands. Meanwhile, Ethan was urgently organizing repairs to the wall. Jenkins was deeply disappointed in Ethan's performance, causing panic among the residents first, and now someone had escaped outside, leading to several deaths. He urged Ethan to hasten the execution of the rebels. If not, more bloodshed would follow. But Ethan cut Jenkins off. He had his own way of doing things. He wouldn't kill indiscriminately, which infuriated Jenkins. The next day, Ethan pressured Harold to reveal the location of the other rebels. He showed Harold photos of Alan's gruesome death, proving he wasn't lying. That unknown creatures lurked outside, and they must stop trying to escape or face death. Harold finally relented. He gave up the names of the other rebels. Elsewhere, Pam approached Teresa, hinting at a secret location outside town and giving her an access card. Teresa went to the outskirts and indeed found an abandoned cabin. Beneath it, she discovered a mysterious basement. At that moment, Ethan was driving to the town's secret base. He took out the rebel list, intending to use the surveillance system to find them. The tracking implants showed them gathered in a small tavern, but when they checked the surveillance feed, only the owner was inside. Jenkins quickly called the owner. They then realized the rebels had removed their tracking chips, and because Ethan delayed dealing with the rebels, the first generation of Wayward Pines launched an assault on the station. They claimed they were protecting the town and their future. Arlene spat in Jason's face, and enraged, Jason subdued her, handcuffed her to a cabinet. Then they took out weapons, preparing to execute the rebels on the spot. Despite Kate's pleas, Jason, thoroughly brainwashed by the town's teachings, brought the rebels out and shot them dead one by one. Just as Kate was about to be executed too, Ethan arrived in time and saved her. Seeing her husband die before her eyes, Kate was now utterly heartbroken. Nothing Ethan said could console her. She no longer believed a word he spoke. Just then, Teresa suddenly appeared. She said she had a major discovery. She took Ethan and Kate to the basement she'd found that day. The place looked very old, seemingly unused for a long time. They discovered a computer containing hundreds of video files. The person in the videos was Evans, who had escaped earlier. They clearly showed the apocalyptic scenes outside. Seeing this, Kate finally accepted the truth of humanity's extinction. Ethan said Jenkins was a control freak. They had to tell everyone the truth. Ethan came up with an idea. He called Jenkins, saying he'd had a change of heart and would execute Kate, the rebel leader, that very night. Jenkins said he should have done it sooner and quickly called a town meeting. At midnight, everyone gathered in the square. They chanted and demanded Kate's execution, but the next moment, Ethan lowered his knife. He told the residents he would reveal the truth tonight. They'd all been deceived. The world they knew was gone. Their town was the last haven on Earth, and the one manipulating it all was Dr. Jenkins. He built this prison, trapping everyone here, monitoring their every move. He urged everyone to unite and rise up. Kate then came forward to corroborate. The residents were visibly shaken. Jenkins was stunned. He finally realized it was all Ethan's trap. After a fierce internal struggle, Jenkins decided to cut all power to the town, including the electric fence. He planned to abandon everyone, let the Abbeys in, and purged the town, wiping out all the residents. Sensing disaster, Ethan told everyone to hurry home, pack, and hide in the town's basement. The surveillance screens now showed countless Abbeys approaching. Time was running out with Jenkins. His sister Pam pleaded with him to stop and restore power. But Jenkins believed the residents had lost their value and should all be killed so he could cultivate a new batch. No matter how Pam begged, Jenkins remained obstinate. He even ordered guards to seize her, locking her in a cryo-suspension pod, intending to wake her after the slaughter. Meanwhile, hordes of Abbeys stormed into the town. Residents scattered in terror as the monsters went on a rampage. Scenes of unspeakable horror unfolding. The entire town plunged into panic. Just then, the town's rebels arrived. They concentrated fire, shooting down Abbeys, but overwhelmed by their numbers, they could only fight a retreat. Narrowly escaping into the basement, the supporters finally saw Jenkins's true face. Megan revealed Jenkins's current location, saying that was their only chance for survival. Ethan led everyone through underground tunnels, but Abbeys had broken in. He fired wildly, covering their retreat, finally reaching an elevator safely. Just as they thought they could catch their breath, the elevator stopped, and Abbeys were climbing up the shaft. In the critical moment, they opened the elevator's ceiling hatch. Everyone scrambled out. To cover the others, Ethan decided to sacrifice himself. He bid a final farewell to his son, telling them to run and not look back. He took out the explosives, set the fuse, and prepared to go down with the Abbeys. Meanwhile, Kate stormed into Jenkins's office with a gun. She condemned his twisted actions, but Jenkins claimed he was preserving humanity's future. Just then, a gunshot killed Jenkins. The shooter was his sister, Pam, just awakened. Elsewhere, masses of Abbeys were about to breach the elevator. In his final moments, Ethan recalled precious memories with his loved ones, and to protect everyone, he pressed the detonator. Teresa shed tears of agony. Ben screamed for his father toward the elevator shaft, but a piece of falling debris struck him, knocking him unconscious. When he awoke again, the surroundings were entirely different. A nurse said he'd been in a coma for 3 full years. Ben walked down the street just like his father first arrived in Wayward Pines. The residents were now a completely new set of people. Eerily, the evil doctor. Jenkins was revered as a great man of the town, and a doll symbolizing his father was hanged in midair, a warning to all. No one should ever try to leave Wayward Pines. If you liked today's video, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell to receive all new updates. See you in the next video. Goodbye.